Good to have you with us on this Monday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thank you for starting your week with us. We are going to begin our show with the war in the Middle East that is showing no signs of easing up. On Sunday, Iran named Mojtaba Khamenei as its new supreme leader. He's the son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was assassinated in an airstrike 9 days ago.
Israel bombed a number of Iranian oil depots over the weekend. That sparked major fires blanketing the capital, Tehran, with toxic black fumes. Eyewitnesses describe the scene as apocalyptic. The latest attacks are fueling a new surge in oil prices. They've now hit more than $100 a barrel for the first time since 2022. President Trump downplayed the surge in oil prices, calling it a, quote, very small price to pay, and he is not signaling a willingness to end the war anytime soon. It's a position that was echoed by Iran's foreign minister yesterday on Meet the Press. Take a listen to what both men had to say yesterday.
We're not looking to settle. They'd like to settle. We're not looking to settle.
Well, they have to explain why they started this aggression before we come to the point to even consider a ceasefire. Of course, nobody wants to continue this war. This is not our war. This is not the war of our choice. This is imposed on us by the United States, by Israelis. They have, started this war unprovoked, unwarranted, illegally, and what we are doing is legal act of self-defense.
NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from Tel Aviv. So, Matt, Khamenei's son was appointed Iran's next supreme leader, widely viewed as a hardline leader like his father. What do we know about him, and what has been the reaction both in the U.S. and in Israel?
Well, it's interesting because, of course, we hadn't actually seen Mojtaba Khamenei. It's his big day yesterday. We didn't see him on television, probably because he's in hiding, and it looks as though that's a well-deserved rationale. The United States and Israel have both openly threatened to kill him and basically anybody who was involved in his appointment. But this is a 56-year-old man. He's the son of the slain leader. He's taking over his position. And he is alone because his sister was also killed. His mother, his father, his brother, his entire family was wiped out. He is the only one remaining alive from the Khamenei family, or at least the immediate nuclear family around him. And now he's going to be running the country and running the war against the United States and Israel. He is a hardline cleric. He is very close with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is, of course, influential. They're the ones leading Iran's defense and leading the crackdown internally in Iran. So he is exactly the kind of person that experts had warned the U.S. and Israel could potentially take over should the Ayatollah be killed. That is exactly what has happened. He has also gone against reformers within the Iranian government who had sought to reach out to the West. So he is definitely anti-West, definitely in favor of Iran's nuclear weapons program, and definitely angry after his whole family was killed.
Matt, let's talk more about what we're seeing on the ground in Iran, these Israeli strikes on oil depots. We've seen scenes of just Tehran sort of shrouded in this thick black smoke, and then the impact that's having on oil prices. Tell us about this.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing, well, the oil prices are another matter entirely, but what we're seeing in Iran, clouds of black smoke with soot and tar that have been coming out of these destroyed energy facilities, including gas pipelines that have lit up in the middle of Tehran. We've seen huge explosions outside of the city, and a lot of people there are describing rain soaked with gasoline and oil that is falling from the sky. The Iranians have issued a declaration saying that they're concerned about the environmental impact and the impact to people's health of these attacks. It looks as though, according to Barak Ravid of Axios, that the United States was not happy with Israel for its targeting of energy infrastructure. Very much worth noting, guys. When Russia attacks the energy infrastructure in Ukraine, it is widely considered a war crime. And in fact, the International Criminal Court has issued charges against top Russian leaders for doing exactly what Israel is doing right now in Iran.
Matt, we're also watching Israel's ground and air attacks on Lebanon. The Lebanese government says more than 500,000 people are now displaced there. Real quick, what is the latest on that front?
Yeah, 500,000 people displaced, probably more than 400 people killed. It is a repeat of what we've seen in the past that ended with a truce negotiated in part by the United States that ended the fighting in November of 2024 between Israel and Hezbollah. Now we're seeing a very vicious fight right now. The Israelis say they're expanding their operations on the ground. They have long ago demanded that all Lebanese civilians retreat past the Litani River, which is essentially the dividing line that starts southern Lebanon. This is an offensive that is ongoing and one of the more proximate wars that we're seeing springing out of this fight between Israel and the U.S. and Iran.
All right, Matt Bradley in Tel Aviv. Matt, thank you so much.
Well, for more on the appointment of Iran's new supreme leader and what it means, let's bring in Alex Vitanka. He's a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute. Alex, good morning. Thanks, as always, for joining us. So Mr. Khamenei now steps into the role that under Iran's constitution has full control of Iran's politics and its armed forces. It also means he's the new spiritual leader. Let's talk through this. I think this was a decision that some saw coming. Do you agree with that? And what do we know about him?
Good morning to you. Look, it was not really preordained. Mojtaba Khamenei, this 56-year-old son of Ali Khamenei, has been a political figure, at least going back to 2005, when he famously helped the then President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad emerge. And he created enemies as early as 2005 because people just didn't like the fact that he was operating behind the scenes. But that's really important. He is an operator behind the scenes. His father, when he took over in 1989, had been president for 8 years. Everyone knew him. He was good at giving speeches. There are about 2 or 3 videos of Mojtaba Khamenei giving speeches. There's very little known about him. What we do know about him is he is not someone who controls much as of today. He needs time to grow into this office if he's not assassinated. And the other important thing to remember, he is not someone who got this job because of his religious credentials. He has very little, non-existent essentially. He is the man of the Revolutionary Guards. He's a symbol of the power of the Revolutionary Guards. So he's not going to call the shots. The Revolutionary Guard is going to call the shots. He's going to be the symbolic figurehead that, keeps this theocracy together.
Alex, over the weekend, the IDF doubled down on its warnings that any successor to the elder Khamenei would be considered a target. We also know last week, President Trump told Axios this choice would be what he said was unacceptable. So walk us through what Iran's pick could mean for the war moving forward and just what it means perhaps for the military strategy from the U.S. and Israel.
Look, in terms of where the Iranians are at, they're saying they're in this fight till, as the foreign minister Abbas Araghchi was suggesting over the weekend, there is some kind of a permanent peace. What that means, it's anybody's guess, but that's what they want. So they're in this fight for now. They feel like if they have an agreement for another ceasefire, that the U.S. and Israel will walk away for a few months and they'll come back and bomb again. That's their position. So they want something that looks like a permanent peace. And what they can do for now, unfortunately for the rest of the world, is they can keep the rest of the world economy essentially hostage because they can do so much damage, at least to the energy markets to their south. And, the $100 barrel could get worse going forward. And takes me to the end goal of the United States and Israel. And this is the part that really is confusing for those of us who watch this on an hourly basis. Is the United States and Israel, are they going to stay together in this mission? Because we've seen already that U.S. and Israel have different goals. Israel wants the end of the Islamic Republic. United States, maybe not so. So that end goal, that clarification from the White House in terms of what it is that President Trump really wants before he can call it a victory remains to be seen.
How is his selection being received in Iran?
Look, the 5-10% of Iranians who support this regime, I'm sure, are elated. They're happy. The 86-year-old father got martyrdom, essentially, thanks to the Israeli attack. I don't think Ali Khamenei could have asked for a better death. he's, for his supporters, again, 5-10%, not a majority of Iranians. But he was killed by a foreign adversary during the holy month of Ramadan. They're going to, in their historical terms, this is befits his revolutionary sort of personality. But vast majority of Iranians right now who are trying to make a living, I can only imagine they're totally, demoralized because this is one of the worst things that could happen. 36 years of Ali Khamenei, and now he's gone and his son takes over. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Iranians were looking for a secular democratic system. Look, it's not too late. And I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the end of this war. But as of right now, the face of Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader of Iran just sends all the wrong signals to everyone in Iran and I think around the world.
Alex Vitanka, thank you as always.
Even though the conflict is escalating, Iran's foreign minister says the country will not consider a ceasefire. He said his country must continue to fight for their people. In an exclusive interview yesterday on Meet the Press, moderator Kristen Welker pressed the minister about any support Iran might be getting from its allies.
Hello there, Joe and Savannah. This week on Meet the Press, I spoke exclusively with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi about whether Iran is receiving help from Russia to help locate U.S. forces. Let me ask you, because NBC News is reporting that Iran is receiving help from Russia to help locate U.S. forces. Are you receiving any help from Russia?
Well, we have a strategic partnership with Russia.
So that's a yes?
And well, a military cooperation between Iran and Russia is not something new. It's not a secret. It has been in the past and is still there and will continue in the future.
Is Russia helping you locate U.S. forces? I just want to be very clear here.
Well, I don't have exact military information. As far as I know, we have a very good partnership with Russia.
So they are helping you. They are providing intelligence.
Well, they are helping us in many different directions. I don't have any detailed information.
You can see my full interview and a whole lot more at meetthepress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press right here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m.
All right, Kristen Welker, thank you. Let's continue our conversation with NBC News military analyst Colonel Steve Warren. Colonel, good to have you with us. So Iran's foreign minister did not explicitly confirm or deny whether Iran was receiving Russian assistance, but a few days ago, we know NBC News reported, citing 4 sources familiar with the matter, Russia was providing intelligence on the location of U.S. forces in the region. How does this transform the war for the U.S. if it's true? What would Russia even be able to tell Iran?
If it is true, and great reporting from our NBC colleagues, if it is true, it is something to be concerned about. Now, one thing that's not clear is the level of intelligence that the Russians may be providing. In other words, there are really 2 different types of troop intelligence that the Iranians might want. One is simple location type. In other words, saying, hey, Iranians, there's another American ship in the Gulf. That's one thing. So that's important for the Iranians to know, but it doesn't help them. The other type is target quality intelligence. In other words, saying there's a new ship in the Gulf, and here is the digits that you can dial into one of your missiles and have it land right on that ship. So we're not sure exactly what level. My instinct tells me it's probably the first level, not that target quality intelligence. But the Russians do have good capabilities, satellites and others, that can really help.
Colonel, NBC News is also reporting that it is increasingly likely that the U.S. was behind this strike that hit an Iranian elementary school last week. As this war unfolded, more than 170 people were killed. Many of them were children. Preliminary findings by the Trump administration are showing it was an American munition that was used, according to a U.S. official and another person familiar with the investigation. But over the weekend, when asked, President Trump said it was the Iranians who hit the school. Also last week, we heard Secretary Hegseth say this whole thing was under investigation. Walk us through how this might work. How difficult is it to determine who is responsible for hitting the school? How do those in charge of the investigation go about this?
Sure. The way they're conducting this investigation, frankly, is by, number one, looking at every target that we serviced at that time. So in that day, on that, in that time frame. Then they're going to look at every single aircraft that flew into that target area. Then they're going to look at what exact time each aircraft executed its mission, and then they'll stack it all up. Frankly, the investigation should be largely complete by now. The Pentagon or U.S. Central Command should already know which aircraft dropped exactly which munition and exactly where it landed. Now, the next phase of the investigation will be to determine, okay, was there a targeting mistake? In other words, did we think this was a barracks and accidentally hit it? Did we misidentify it? Was there an intelligence problem? So they're going to look at all of those different things to determine why was it that we dropped a munition on this exact spot. Now, it could be that it was simply a bad shot, right? People do miss sometimes. Sometimes the munition will malfunction and it can fly off course. Doubtful in this case because it appears to have been a direct hit on the building. So it's going to be a really deep dive look into why was our intelligence wrong? Why did we accidentally, why did we think this was a legitimate target? And to be very clear, the United States military never has and never will target a school. That will never happen.
Colonel, while we have you, oil is a huge headline today. What do you make of these Israeli attacks on Iran's oil facilities?
Well, it's certainly going to be demoralizing for the Iranians, right? These are tough attacks that are going to impact the way everyday Iranians live. Clearly, these dramatic images of this thick billowing black smoke and reports of gasoline rain, that's going to be very demoralizing for the Iranians as well. So this I believe is an attempt to really bring some pressure from the Iranian people it's the Israelis' attempt to motivate the Iranians to overthrow their government.
All right, Colonel Steve Warren, as always, appreciate your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Well, back home in the United States, President Trump is threatening the newly appointed leader of Iran, saying he won't last long if they don't have his approval.
In a post on social media Saturday, he added certain areas and groups of people in Iran are, quote, under serious consideration for complete destruction and certain death. Comes as the U.S. military announces another U.S. service member has been killed in the Middle East, the 7th since the start of the war.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, good morning. So let's start with the death of that American service member. What more do we know?
This is the 7th service member that has died in the Iran operation. We do not know a lot. We don't have a name yet. But what we do know is that this is somebody who was injured in the first wave of counterattacks from Iran that killed other service members who then sadly lost their life over the weekend. So the death count on the American side is now up to 7. We saw the dignified transfer ceremony this weekend for the first American fatalities of this war, and now that number is 7.
And back home, a lot of people are wondering if what's going on in the Middle East is going to lead to more U.S. servicemen and women going overseas, being put into harm's way. We do understand that there are National Guard units that are being called up to support the war in Iran. What are they being called on to do?
The president has broad authority in times of war or national emergency related to foreign countries to deploy National Guard units. We know that members of the New Hampshire National Guard have been deployed as part of this mission in Iran. We know that members of the Vermont National Guard have been deployed. And if the war continues, you can expect that more National Guard units will be deployed, not necessarily, directly into combat in Iran, but perhaps around the world. Obviously, the United States is conducting strikes from around the Middle East, and it has other needs that have to be filled in as some of the active duty military are called, closer to the war. So you can expect, if this goes on, that you will see more National Guardsmen called into action.
John, President Trump also spoke with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer on the phone this weekend. It was the first time they've talked since President Trump said that he was not happy with the UK. What did they discuss? Was it productive in squashing tension here?
Yeah, I'm not sure anything will be productive in squashing tensions in that President Trump and Prime Minister Starmer do not appear to like each other very much. They have political differences, philosophical differences. I think I think the UK wanted to stop President Trump from actively attacking Keir Starmer, and I think the president still has things that he wants from the UK. He did tweet, or Truth Social on Saturday, that he doesn't need the UK anymore because the war is already won in Iran, as we see from the video and from all the reporting and from the continued loss of life. Obviously, the war in Iran is continuing and is not over, but there does seem to be a sour grapes sort of feeling from the president toward the prime minister. We don't know a ton about exactly what they discussed. 10 Downing Street, the prime minister's office, basically, they released a very general statement that they discussed the Middle East, but the UK is not engaged in Iran in offensive actions, and it does not look like that's going to change, this call between the two leaders notwithstanding.
All right, John Allen, thank you so much.
With the spring travel season just getting underway, airports are warning of possible travel disruptions in the coming weeks. On Sunday, a security scare triggered a massive evacuation and delays at the airport in Kansas City. On top of that, the partial government shutdown is creating TSA staffing shortages at several major travel hubs, and that's forcing travelers to wait hours just to get through security. NBC News correspondent George Solis reports on the travel troubles.
A terrifying scene at Kansas City International. Alarms blaring as travelers pack the tarmac. The dramatic moments unfolding after airport officials say they became aware of an unspecified situation. The all clear given, and the FBI later saying the threat was determined not to be credible. The scare at the airport comes as a travel nightmare is unfolding for some people just before the peak of spring break season. At Louis Armstrong New Orleans International, scores of long lines at gates and terminals. The airport urging people to arrive 3 hours before their flights, citing TSA staffing shortages from the partial government shutdown now entering its fourth week.
TSA line starts downstairs.
Texas airports with a similar warning.
I've been in this line for 2 hours, over 2 hours.
This was the scene at Houston's airport, reporting a more than 3-hour wait to get through security. Travelers calling the lines monstrous and urging lawmakers to help end the shutdown.
The government needs to get their act together so that we can live our normal life.
At one point, the airport even issuing a ground stop because of the volume.
All eyes are really going to be on TSA, not just because of this partial shutdown, but also because of the international tensions that are occurring right now.
Here in Miami, travelers are just as concerned and wondering if the situation will only get worse.
I would be pretty unhappy if that happened to me, and especially unhappy that would be happening because of political squabbling.
George Solis, NBC News.
Well, forecasters say the central U.S. is in the path of some dangerous severe storms this week, putting millions at risk. It all comes after a weekend of deadly tornadoes that swept through southern Michigan and eastern Oklahoma, claiming at least 8 lives so far.
For a closer look at what's ahead, let's look at your morning News Now weather with meteorologist Andrea Romero. Andrea, good morning.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. And we continue to have this active spring weather pattern across much of the central and southern plains today, extending into the southeast, where we're going to have this cluster of storms that will be developing and moving eastward. We have the possibility of some localized flash flooding in that location, with that slight risk of severe weather extending all the way from Arkansas into parts of Mississippi into Alabama. And we're expecting even some storms as far east as Atlanta, Georgia, and even into parts of Texas. Today, the main threat would mostly be damaging hail, maybe 2-inch diameter or larger. So we're talking about tennis ball size hail that'll be dropping from the sky. So that can definitely lead to some problems in those areas. Now, that threat of severe weather will continue to expand. It will become even more widespread for tomorrow as the strong storm system continues to shift onto the plains. We're expecting those storms to ramp up, especially later on in the day, and we could see the strong line of tornadoes that are possible that we can have all the way from Oklahoma City down into parts of Texas, and enhanced risk up from Quincy into parts of Chicago as well. And then even on Wednesday, that storm threat will continue to move on eastward, and in parts of New England, the Northeast, they can see the line of strong storms advancing through that area. As far up into like parts of Pennsylvania, we can have some severe weather, and the threat will mostly be those damaging wind gusts of over 60 miles per hour. We have that excessive, the possibility of excessive flooding across some areas, especially in the southeast. We're expecting 1 to 3 inches of rainfall. Up north, of course, where the temperatures are colder, we could have some snowfall through Wednesday across the northern plains and into the Great Lakes. But then, of course, we are talking about those above average temperatures that we are enjoying in much of the country, 10 to 30 degrees above average. We could have some record highs today in parts of the country, as we can see there, with temperatures that It'll be in the 80s right there in the heartland, extending over into the East Coast. We're looking at temperatures into the 77 maybe high in Washington, D.C. Here in New York City, we're talking about 70 degrees. But it is a roller coaster. We were talking about that. It's, we're getting into that springtime weather pattern where we have those highs and lows. So we are expecting some temperatures to drop by the end of the week and back to reality for many of us.
It is still March.
Yes. Yeah, the fake outs. Thank you.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.